Tacoma loose brake caliper update. Did I fix the problem? Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Robmotive. So, if you recall, a little while back, I had what I think was a pretty dangerous loose brake caliper problem with my Toyota Tacoma. To give you a little bit of background, let me tell you what was going on. I had a noise, I had a sensation, a weird feeling in the truck. It seemed to be getting progressively worse. Now, to go back a little further, I did have the front of the truck lifted a little bit by way of Bilstein adjustable shocks. So they did have to get under there and do some adjusting, and the business that I had do it said they didn't know for sure whether or not they took the brake calipers off. Said sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. They apologized, they said they could have, they really couldn't say either way. Not a big deal for me, I understand, things happen. It's a bummer, but things happen, and I don't know for sure that they did it, or maybe the truck came from the factory that way. I don't really know. But irregardless, that's not the point of this video. So I had a problem, I had a bunch of noise and stuff. The brake caliper on the passenger side was loose. About a 1/4 inch backed off from one of the screws, bolts that hold it on, and the other one about an 1/8 inch, maybe a hair more, was also backed off. So it was allowing the brake caliper to move around down there. And that's the sensation I was feeling, and that's the noise I was hearing, like something was bouncing around under the front end of my truck. It was very strange. So I did discover it myself. I did tighten up the bolts. It wasn't a big deal. There's only 2 bolts that hold it on, and they're pretty darn easy to tighten. So I cranked them down. They're not going to come loose now, I don't think. So how's it doing? Well, I can tell you that that was indeed the problem. I haven't had any more weird noises or weird sensations, nothing bouncing around underneath the front of my truck since then. So I am confident that that was the problem. And I will say, for a brief moment, I thought maybe that when I had the tires done, because I did have the wheels and tires done actually, and they had to lift the truck, and they lifted them with like a scissor thing under there, right? So that pulled the truck up. I thought, well, maybe they had that somehow on the exhaust, and they broke I don't know, something on the exhaust under there, and my exhaust was bouncing around, because that would have been the first thing I would have thought this was. Fortunately, that was not the case. So it's been fine. I haven't had any more noises. I have checked it once since I retightened everything, just to make sure that nothing had loosened up again, because honestly, I'm not overly confident that those bolts didn't start to back out themselves. Maybe there wasn't any Loctite put on, which, by the way, that is another question I'd ask the shop. If they have to take the calipers off, do they put Loctite on to hold the screws in, or bolts? And they did tell me that it depends. If they came with Loctite on them, in other words, from the factory or manufacturer, then they would put Loctite on themselves to make it the same way that it was. However, if it didn't, then they wouldn't. So he didn't know, of course. I mean, they do a lot of business there, so I didn't really expect them to remember little details of my truck specifically. Again, things happen. So it's been fine. No more issues. On my retighten, I couldn't tighten the bolts anymore, so I am confident that they didn't back out at all, and everything is still secure under there. I guess the lesson learned for me is, when you take your vehicle into a shop, make sure that you just nose around a little bit throughout different steps in what they're doing. Because had I seen that they had taken the brake calipers off, and I'm not trying to lay blame here, I would have known to check that myself. It never really dawned on me when I had the truck up on the lift at my place that it could have been something like that. I just got lucky. You know, I'm not a master mechanic or anything by any means, but you have to be intuitive, I guess, when you're nosing around at anything that could cause something like that, anything that's bolted down. And that's what I was looking for when I discovered it. Anything that was bolted down. I was checking bolts under there, not even necessarily related to what they would have done when they put the shocks on, but anything, because I didn't know what the problem was. But again, I'll say, if I'd have been out in their shop, and I don't know why I didn't this time. Typically, when I have my truck in a shop where I can, I'll be out there nosing around a little bit just to see what they're doing. And I think it's a good practice to follow, just in case something like this happens, that it might give you a little bit of a clue as to what you should check if there is a problem down the road. So I'm very happy with it. I've got my Tacoma back the way that I wanted it, no issues. And it just goes to prove that anytime you do anything to your truck, there could be other issues down the road. You have to be aware of that. Really, any mod that you do where you're going to take something off that was factory installed, I suppose. In this case, the brake calipers. You know, there's another thing that you have to be sure of, and I always try to triple check or quadruple check myself when you install anything that maybe doesn't even have anything to do with removing any kind of a factory part. Always good to go back over your work 2, 3, 4 times, grab the wrench, make sure those bolts are tight, because the last thing you want to do is get your job all done, jump in the truck, be driving down the road, and have something wrong. One other thing I want to note about the brake caliper. I had some comments on the channel because I had mentioned that one of the concerns I had was that that thing could have come completely unbolted and become airborne. Now, somebody suggested that, well, you know, that's not going to happen because the brake line is connected to it. Well, how long do you think that is going to hold up before it breaks or pulls free while that brake caliper is slamming around down there under beside your tire? You know, it hits the tire, goes flying in your wheel well. I would say it's probably not going to be long. So indeed, I think that is a valid concern for a couple of reasons. One, so that it doesn't go through the windshield of the person behind you, because guess what? Should anything bad happen, that's on you. And secondly, so it doesn't damage my own truck. You know, when you're going 70, 80 miles an hour and something like that, and it is a big, heavy hunk of metal, pops off of your truck and it's spinning, it's probably going to destroy your wheel well, maybe damage other things underneath the truck. So definitely it was a concern, a valid concern, the way that I see it. Anyway, leave a comment. I'd be curious if you've ever experienced anything like this. You ever had a brake caliper loosen up? I'd be curious to know. Also, real quick, I do have an additional channel. It is Robmotive JT, all about my 2020 Jeep Gladiator. Check it out, and if you're interested, please consider subscribing. Don't forget to click that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. And do me a favor, smash that subscribe button on the way out. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there. Bye.